Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 8 of the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. For those of you who don't know me and who haven't tuned in before, my name's Mathew Hamilton. I'm your host and I'm delighted to have your company. We're going to talk about probably the number one phobia that people have, which is public speaking. And from the perspective of, if you are terrified of public speaking, can you still lead people? Because it is true that to be a leader, you need to communicate, and there might be a fair bit of leading team meetings and standing up in front of people and talking about updates and perhaps what you're attempting to achieve in your team. But before we go on to look at specific principles, let's delve into history and have a look at somebody else's public speaking journey to perhaps help us along the way. Abraham Lincoln's journey to becoming one of the greatest orators in American history wasn't an easy one. In fact, early on in his life, the mere thought of public speaking filled him with dread. Lincoln was acutely aware of his awkward appearance, his high-pitched voice, and the way that he often stumbled over his words. It made him feel self-conscious, as though he didn't belong on stage in front of the crowd, and the very idea of public speaking seemed like this insurmountable challenge in front of him. Before most speeches, Lincoln would be overcome with anxiety. His heart would race and his palms would sweat. He was often plagued by self-doubt, wondering if he'd be able to effectively convey his thoughts. The pressure of delivering words that would be scrutinised by an entire nation was almost too much to bear. Before key moments like the famous Gettysburg Address, Lincoln spent hours rehearsing his words in solitude, trying to calm his nerves and perfect his delivery. It wasn't just the speech that made him anxious, it was the weight of the moment, knowing how important his words would be to the people who would listen. One evening, as Lincoln prepared for yet another important address, he confided in his friend and speechwriter, a man by the name of John Nicolay. "I'm not even a great speaker," Lincoln admitted, his voice tinged with self-doubt. "But I know what I believe, and I'll try to tell the people." It was a rare moment of vulnerability. Lincoln knew that public speaking didn't come naturally to him, but his deep conviction about his cause pushed him to continue. Now, as the years passed, Lincoln's fear of public speaking began to fade, but not without effort. He practiced it relentlessly, honing his ability to communicate with clarity and passion. He learned how to connect with people, not just through words, but through his very presence, his calm, deliberate pace, his ability to look out over a crowd and make them feel as though he was speaking directly to each individual. Slowly, Lincoln began to transform from the nervous young man who had once dreaded addressing an audience to the eloquent and powerful speaker whose words would resonate through history. When he delivered the Gettysburg Address, the nation was gripped with anticipation. His speech was short, but each word was carefully chosen, each sentence carefully crafted. Despite the fear that he'd once felt, Lincoln stood before the crowd with a quiet confidence, speaking from the heart. His words didn't just speak to the moment, they transcended it, shaping the way the nation would think about itself for generations to come. Abraham Lincoln's evolution as a speaker wasn't just about mastering the art of public speaking. It was about overcoming his own self-doubt and fear. His story is a testament to the power of persistence and the belief that even when we feel our most vulnerable, our voices can still be heard. Through hard work and dedication, Lincoln not only conquered his own fears, but he also found a way to use his words to change the course of history. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? One of the greatest public speakers in history suffered from the same fears, doubts, and insecurities that all of us seem to as well. And that's not an uncommon theme. I worked under a CEO who told me that they used to throw up before every presentation that they gave in university. And this person addresses Parliament. At the federal government level, in the Australian government, this person addresses Parliament. There's cameras everywhere, broadcast to thousands of people. Whoever wants to tune in can watch it. And she will deliver her addresses and answer questioning from government ministers in front of these cameras. And she'll do it with confidence. And that is a woman who was throwing up before giving university presentations as a younger woman. And what that shows, similar to the story arc that we just saw in the Lincoln example, is that it doesn't matter if you start out as an anxious wreck who's not confident in yourself when it comes to public speaking. In fact, it's so normal that it'd almost be strange if you weren't nervous about public speaking, especially if you don't have a great deal of experience in it. So I always like to think that if you can look back through history at examples like that of people who, for all intents and purposes, are fantastic public speakers, and you find out that in actual fact they were just like you at one time, nervous and anxious and afraid of judgment, what that does is it encourages us to have a go and understand that just like anything else, you're not going to start off really good at it. It's a skill, just like anything else, that you have to build and work at over time. You know, the fear is so common. I feel it. I speak, for a living. And some days are more intense than others, but there are absolutely still some days where I'm having to give a presentation in front of people who are much more senior than I. And I feel quite nervous about it. But what that does is it means I'm motivated to plan. The anxiety that I feel in those moments, before those moments, drives me to plan. I will rehearse my presentation just like Lincoln did. I'll prepare intensely. And the reason I do that is because I feel personally that if I have a plan and I take action, it removes doubt. I want to make sure that by the time I step up to that podium or the time comes to lead that team meeting, I know exactly what I'm going to talk about. I've rehearsed it. I have it in front of me. And I'm ready to go. I'm not one of these people who likes to rock up to presentations and meetings and just go off the cuff. I like to make sure that I'm prepared and ready to go. So the encouraging thing here is that if someone like Abraham Lincoln and many other famous people, I can assure you, felt this in the beginning and then worked through it over time to become really fantastic orators, then you can too. So I would say if you feel that anxiety and you feel that stress and you just go, oh my God, I cannot possibly do it, I'd say that's pretty normal, okay? It's particularly intense with the public speaking example, I think, because there's that fear of being judged by the tribe, particularly in a leadership position because you're on display. People expect competence. But it's okay to learn a new skill and do something that you're not particularly experienced at and not be good at it at the start. The question you have to ask yourself is, am I going to be better at this 5 years from now than I am now? And the answer, if you work hard at it and put yourself in those positions where you are testing yourself, the answer is a resounding yes. So I don't think that being anxious and scared to speak publicly precludes you from leading a team. What I will say is that if you are unable to overcome that fear, if you are unable to put yourself in a position where you are going ahead and doing it anyway, therefore not giving yourself the opportunity to build the skill, that will in time limit how far you can progress up the chain with respect to leadership. You know, at a lower sort of junior team leader level, you don't have to be an incredibly amazing communicator. As long as you can get your ideas across and people understand, that's okay. But if you want to get to, you know, senior management level, you know, C-suite sort of level, your communication in public needs to be pretty good. Okay? So that's what I'd say in regards to that. It doesn't preclude you at the more junior level, but as you go up, the demands are greater. So perhaps that is some motivation to overcome some fear and start working on that skill now, where perhaps it's not quite as consequential. There's a really nice quote, and it says that courage is not the absence of fear, it's feeling the fear and doing the thing anyway. And I really like that. I think in most situations where you're up against something that you've not done before or you're not particularly experienced, you wouldn't be human if you didn't feel some element of trepidation. It's quite normal. The other thing to remember, and I'll share this little anecdote because it surprised the hell out of me actually. I would often find in the early days, and even still, you know, I would give presentations and I'd be really, really nervous beforehand. And in my mind, when I'm standing up there, I'm thinking to myself, everybody must be able to tell how nervous I am. They must be able to tell, you know, I must be giving it away. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, the feedback is fantastic. You know, I've never had anybody tell me, hey, I noticed how nervous you were. You know, the feedback has always been, wow, you smashed that out of the park. That was really good. And I'll say, hey, did I come across as confident and self-assured? And generally the answer is always yes. So that might just be my particular character and personality. Maybe I come across as a little bit more self-assured even when I'm anxious and nervous. Maybe others don't have that luxury. But film yourself. Ask others for feedback. You know, sometimes the perception that others have of you doesn't marry up with the one that you have of yourself. And that feedback and learning how others perceive you, especially for things like public speaking, can be really, really handy. So now I have that confidence of knowing that even if I'm feeling a little stressed and in my own head, most likely if I just ensure I've planned well and I plow on through, most likely people aren't going to see any of that, okay, which is quite reassuring. And you might be the same. Video yourself giving a run through, give a practice presentation and film it, see how you come across. Ask other people, okay, that feedback can be invaluable. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. It's awesome to have your company. There is a link in the show notes which says send us a text. And I would love for you guys to get involved with the show. Let's make this a communal thing. Send me through your ideas. Send me through some, you know, suggestions for topics that you would like to talk about. And perhaps we will bring them up on the show and I'll give you a shout out. I would like to even just hear about your experiences. You know, what do you find most challenging about your leadership journey? What challenges would you like help in overcoming? So that'd be really great to get you guys involved, and please do go ahead and use that link. Of course, hit the subscribe button for me if you do find the content in this show useful, and leave us a nice 5-star review on whatever podcast app you like to get your podcasts on. I know it seems like a trivial thing, but those little things build up over time and they actually really help small little shows like this. So if you're getting value, please let us know so that we can measure it. Guys, thank you so much. And until next time, I'll see you later.